Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I guess I'm Tamaan Osbourne-Roberts, son of this bald guy here.
That is my son, Keston. Always
awesome.
sharp.
That's awesome.
So, Tamaan Osbourne-Roberts, class of 99, he, him, his, and we're currently sitting on the porch of my house here in the Central Park neighborhood of Denver, Colorado. It's a little hard to say. My entire family, my brother's speech at my wedding about me, he was my best man, was about how I was marrying this wonderful person, Camille, my wife, Williams 2000, to rein me in. And that hasn't really changed so much in the ensuing 15 years. Really, of all the things that I do, I'd have to say that as far as hobbies, Capoeira is probably my favorite one. I've been playing Capoeira for 8 years now, consistently, a little time before that even. And learning, progressing. For those who don't know, Capoeira, it's an Afro-Brazilian martial art that was hidden in dance during the times of slavery, and was used for resistance and, in many ways, to actually escape slavery, also for cultural preservation, a whole range of things. And it's a big piece of my life. I really, really enjoy it, and it's really fantastic. It's singing, it's dance, it's martial arts, it's relationships, it's connections to who I am and my history. It's really, really a big thing.
Is this a family sort of based activity, or do you do it with other friends here in the area?
So I belong to a group that meets a little closer to downtown, and in addition to that, my kids both play. And I don't know if they'll continue playing. They've had a little break because of the pandemic, but we'll see. My son says he still wants to do it. My daughter will be in and out, I think. She got some other interests right about now, so. So I am trained as a family physician, and right now I'm a full-time family physician, and I work for a company that does value-based care, which is a way of paying for medicine that allows me to spend more time with my patients, 30 minutes, an hour, really getting to know them, solving their issues, and going about that. It's been an interesting time in 2020 and 2021 to be a physician. I ran off, as I often do, to Carnival in Trinidad and Tobago. My parents are Trinidadian, and I came back from Carnival in 2020 directly into a pandemic. And a week later, I'd caught COVID. And it's, it thankfully a light case. I didn't end up hospitalized. Got it very early, and took about 9 months for symptoms to fully clear up. But thankfully they did. And I've just been working throughout that time, helping people, serving my community, all those sorts of things. And I'd say that's the part of me where it connects with who I am. I come from a service-oriented family. My dad was in the U.S. Air Force, even as an immigrant. And my mother was trained as a science teacher and worked in schools and other sorts of things. And because of that early, I got a love for two things, math and science, and service. And being a physician and really working to serve primarily underserved communities, primarily Spanish-speaking communities, recent immigrant communities, all of these sorts of things, service, the communities I'm serving, this love for math and science, all of those things are really wrapped up in what I do. I should also add that in addition to the clinical work I do, I've done a lot in administration. I've been Chief Medical Officer for the Medicaid program, the office that runs the Medicaid program here in Colorado. Chief Medical Officer of a large data company that also services that division here in Colorado. And I've done a range of things in terms of trying to make the healthcare system better. Engaged in policy work. I've written policy that for the American Medical Association and the American Academy of Family Physicians, including the policy that got the AMA, the American Medical Association, to support Obamacare. And I was a co-author, one of the lead co-authors on that. That was really nice. But also policy on excessive use of force in policing. And recently, through my role on the AMA's Council on Science and Public Health, I helped to guide policy that looked at drugs and for sedation in cases of what is sometimes called agitated delirium, and appropriate limits and working to reform that system, which is here in our community here in Colorado. We had the Elijah McClain case where he died secondary to sedation with ketamine in a law enforcement situation. So the long and the short is everything I do in my career seems to come back to who I am as a person, my background, my family, my race, my status as a first-generation American, all of it.
Thank you so much for sharing that. There's so much inspiration and packed in there from the generational sort of passing down of the notion of service through to just also the aspect of creating sort of inclusion and equity in spaces around, especially connecting healthcare to issues around race and systemic issues in our society right now. Especially in the past year, how have you kept yourself inspired? What's been that go-to, whether it's whatever small thing or large thing keeps you inspired to keep going with that work? Because I'm sure that's not easy.
It's not always easy. It can be difficult work. It can be lonely work. And I'd say what has kept me inspired are people. It really starts here at home. As I mentioned, I'm married to a wonderful woman, also a Williams alum. And I have two kids, my daughter who is 9, almost 10, be 10 in 3 weeks, and my son who's 12 and a half. And part of it is wanting to make a better world for all of them. Part of it is just really wanting to set a good example. But it's wider than that. It's about connecting to my community and my wider community, whether that's identified as other immigrant families, whether that's identified as people of color, whether that's identified as my city here, Denver. Really just connecting with all the communities I'm a part of and really looking to help them. And sometimes it's just really specific folks that really, when I'm having a hard day, are able to support me somehow. Sometimes that's coworkers. Oftentimes it's friends and mentors who are able to provide really good advice and help me get past a difficult moment. Starting in 2 days, it will actually be my academic community. While I will always first and foremost be an Ephs, I'm actually going to be becoming an Eli in 2 days, because I'm starting a fellowship program in health equity leadership, where I'll be earning my MBA at the Yale School of Management. And staying deeply connected to these issues and to faculty members and new classmates who are just going to be able to support me more and push me harder. Well, I talked a little about how I engage with my community in my work, but a lot of it is engaging with my community in my personal and private life. Sports is a big thing. So Capoeira I mentioned, and that's a big piece, and the physical activity aspect and the performance aspects of that are a big deal. Just being part of my community here in my neighborhood, showing up to events, getting to know my neighbors, and really letting them know that they have another neighbor here, somebody they can count on, somebody who is really here to be a part of where I live. I'd say that increasingly, interestingly enough, it's online. There's a lot of interesting sorts of ways to engage with different folks. So for instance, and I think I alluded to this, I'm a diehard Carnivalesco. I try to make it to as many carnivals as I can, and there's been a little bit of a wrench, thrown in that past year and a half for completely different great reasons. The next 2 years might not be the great time to go while I'm trying to get a degree while working full time, especially with them on WhatsApp and other communities on WhatsApp, texting back and forth and sending messages, in between the time we can be together in person and do those sorts of things. It's community is more than it used to be. It's two things. One is connection with people. Two is kindness. And as far as connection with people, I mean, we both lived in Williamstown. You live there now. if you wanted to get away from people, good luck. It can't be done. And I think there's, can be a double-edged sword because, we all, the running joke is how many Williams students does it take to screw in a light bulb? All of them, what else is there to do? But the reality is that you really learn a lot about what it means to really connect with people, when they're ideal and who you want them to be, maybe when they're not either, but it's just boring, really to live in communion, real, community with other people is a big deal. And it's something that I've discovered not everybody has experiences with. And the more people I meet over time, you really understand that different people have had different levels of exposure to that. And it's been one of the most important things for me personally. And also in the work that I do, is to be able to connect with people and to do it in real, genuine, and great ways. And it's important. So I talk to other folks, and one of the things that comes up is, a lot of other colleges refer to their folks as alums, and we do that. But more often, we say, do you know any Williams people? And it's a small, subtle difference. And it's not completely unique to Williams, but we do it a lot. And that has always stuck by me because that's one of the things. That leads me to kindness. One of my really formative experiences was before I ever enrolled or matriculated. It's your senior year, you've gotten into some schools. If you're lucky, you'll be able to go and visit several of them. And, there were schools that, every school has its flavor and its focus, and they're all wonderful. But when I got to Williams, it was interesting. It didn't strike me as the world's most exciting place for prospective weekend, because it can't be. But what I felt immediately when I got on campus was, this is a place I could live for 4 years, at least. Because there was just this overwhelming sense of goodness, of kindness, of decency amongst not just the faculty and not just the staff and not just the current students, but even all of the admitted students. You could see they were looking for something really, really special around people's ability to listen to one another, to be kind to one another, to really just build something together. And that stuck with me, and it's a big part of the reason that I enrolled, and I still find that to be the case years later whenever I meet somebody who's been there. Family first. My life goal, which is to do all the things, second. And then those things. But maybe to give a number 3 that's a little more interesting, to go back to Carnival a little bit. Right now in our society, throughout the world, but especially in the United States, there's a lot of strife related to trying to wrestle with our history, our long-standing history of slavery and of genocide and colonialism and all the things that come along with that, and getting to where we happen to be and all of the people that our country is, which is incredibly diverse and made up of all sorts of folks. And one of the things that is important to me is Carnival. And a lot of people go, oh yeah, frivolous, you're going to party. Well, yes, of course I'm going to party. That's part of Carnival. But I think a lot of people don't necessarily know the history, because Carnival came out of slavery. And it was initially one of the few days that slaves in Trinidad and throughout other places that celebrate Carnival were allowed to have a celebration, and allowed to dress up any way they want and actually mock the owners of the plantations and estates and have political commentary and preserve their culture and all these sorts of things. And over time, everything that got involved in Carnival, like steel pan, which was come up with when they banned drums, they started beating on oil drums, and then they discovered they could tune it and make a beautiful, amazing musical instrument that sounds amazing. And stick fighting, which was banned for years but has made a resurgence. And all of these things is this transformation of something that was oppressed or unhappy into something that is now the single biggest celebration of euphoria on the planet, the entire planet. For me, it's spiritual. That level of joy, if you've never been, and I don't think you have, you've got to go. You have to go, because you see what the potential for human happiness is. In togetherness and breaking down boundaries and all being one part of one big human family. You see what that can be. And whenever I go, it inspires me until I can make the next one, 2 or 3 years later, and keeps me going. It is so hard to pick one person. I'm made up, of a lot of experiences, and a lot of people have helped me with a lot of things. If I had to pick one, I would have to say my mother. Nothing against my dad, I love him too. Or any of my other family, or any of the many people who've mentored and helped me up over time. But I'd have to say, my mother, and I would say thank you very much for bringing me into the world at all, for always supporting me, and sticking by me and being my fiercest and first and best advocate when I encountered adversity, for telling me the hard things I didn't want to hear when necessary. Sometimes not when not necessary, but usually when necessary. And even as I continue to grow and develop and become, a person that you couldn't even imagine, continuing to love me still.
That's it hits at my heart a lot. I think I relate to my mother as well, as and so I appreciate what you're saying in there, and there's a lot of depth to that in many ways, and
I'm holding back tears.
But thank you for sharing that as well.
Absolutely.
That sort of really wraps up the whole interview in many ways. We are very grateful for your time and for sharing in such a short amount of time a snippet of those aspects that make you who you are as a human being, as a professional, in your community, as a community member, and the role that you have as an Ephs here. In some ways, it transcends the Purple Valley, and that's sort of the goal of what we're trying to do with this project. Are there any last piece of notes or any piece of advice you'd like to give? Anything that stands out that you like to say to alumni, to other Ephs in the community?
Purple is everywhere. The Purple Valley is a very big valley. It's worldwide, and for folks who are there, enjoy it. It's a short 4 years. For folks who are elsewhere, bring the Purple Valley out to where you are. And go out there and enjoy life. Eat it up. It's short, but it's beautiful, and there is so much to do. # Charmed Life Principle. # Live to Serve. # Love to Serve. To sit in solemn silence on a don't talk about anything. Just it's okay. I already visited craft services. You're cool.